All right. Good morning, little critters. It is the day that we are going to read Picture of Freedom, starting on page 107, which is entitled Saturday, November 12th, 1959. And we're going to read till we get to page 119. We're going to read through the day entitled Later. Later begins on 118 and ends on page 119. Now, you need to have the piece of paper in front of you because there are 3 vocabulary words. So if you do not have the question sheet in front of you, I suggest you pause this and get it now. Okay? All right. There are only 3 vocabs. You probably know them. The first word is licks. The second word is slaughtering. And the third word is smoldering. So I'm going to use each one in a sentence, and you are going to use your brilliant mind to tell me what the meaning is. All right. Licks. Took some licks to the nose when he bothered Pam while Pam was eating his dinner. What are licks? Da, 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 da. I think you said B. Yes, slap wounds from being hit. For Chuck, mean Pam. Okay, number 2, slaughtering. Slaughtering. In the fall of the year, farmers get busy slaughtering pigs, if they're pig farmers. Okay, slaughtering. What does slaughtering mean? You got it. C, killing, which means that smoldering is when a fire has been started, but it's doing more smoking than flaming. That is smoldering. So A, burning slowly with smoke, but no flame. All right, are we ready? Yes, we are. Here we go. Page 107, Saturday, November 12th, 1859. This study season would have been over for me because it's been too cold to fan. If it hadn't been for those hot water treatments Mr. Harms has given William, my learning would have ended like before. But Mr. Harms got me helping during study time. Still not a word from Mr. Harms. He sees me every day, but he walks right by me. I might as well be a shadow person. Wonder, will the treatments really do William any good? Sunday, November 13th, 1859. I just hurried back to Auntie's cabin to write what I just seen. I was going back to the kitchen from the quarters a while ago when I see Mr. Harms going into the woods. I followed him all the way down to the river, being quiet as I could. He put his hands to his mouth and made the sound of a bird. In a few minutes, I heard the same sound. Then out of the river mist stepped the ghostly looking man. As the moon slipped from behind a cloud, I got a good look. He was the one-eyed man in the picture, the abolitionist. No ghost at all, but in the flesh. My heart was beating in my chest so hard I was sure they could hear it. I wanted to run out and tell the one-eyed man that he was my hero, like the long-ago Hercules that Mr. Harms had read about. I wanted to tell the one-eyed man that I was an abolitionist too, and that I wanted to get rid of slavery just like him. But I decided just to watch and listen. I know now that Mr. Harms is in with the abolitionists for sure. That means not all abolitionists are from the Philadelphia, the New York, or the Boston. They come from everywhere, even from the South, even from Virginia. If Mr. Harms was an abolitionist, then what was he doing here at Belmont? Might it have something to do with slaves running away on that railroad that's underground? Monday, November 14th, 1859. Hints came to Auntie's cabin after the dinner meal. None the worse for the beating he took. Licks heal fast on the outside, but they're a whole lot harder to heal inside. We could hear Rufus singing down in the quarters. Come for to carry me home. Sunday, November 20th, 1859. Today we had meeting in the quarters, same as always. I wore my new dress, Mama's dress. Everybody say how nice I looked. I tried real hard not to be puffed up, but when Missy came, I just had to strut a little. pride go before a fall, Rufus whispered in my ear. Then he winked. Hints came to meeting and sat side of Spicy. Wherever Spicy is these days, Hints ain't far behind. Rufus preached about Elijah, who was taken to heaven in a fiery chariot. Home means freedom when we sing. So Rufus's story is telling us we're going to go to freedom one day soon. I thought about Mr. Harms and the one-eyed man and the Underground Railroad. Was somebody getting ready to run? We closed singing. Here you go, you lucky guys. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home. I looked over Jordan, and what did I see? Coming for to carry me home. A band of angels coming after me, coming for to carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home. Ta-da! Later, Wook came to Auntie's cabin late this evening to talk to us. Times had changed. We hardly knew what to say to each other anymore. Wook did a good part of the talking, remembering mostly. She teased me about the time we were playing hiding and I hid in some poison ivy. That made us all laugh. Then Wook said she had to go. Goodbye, she said, hugging Auntie and Spicy. When she hugged me, she whispered softly, pray for me. I haven't said anything to anybody, but Wook is getting ready to run, and the one-eyed man and Mr. Harms are probably helping her. Don't know how I know it, but I do. I do. Monday, November 21st, 1859. Things had been in an uproar all morning. Mass Henley can't be reasoned with. I was right. Rufus, Aggie, Wook, and the baby ran away last night. They just up and flew away. Mass Henley made a promise. I'll free anybody who brings me information about Rufus and who helped him. Think of it, your freedom. I swear it. This ain't about no handkerchief. Mass Henley is promising freedom. If I told him everything I know about Mr. Harms and the one-eyed man, I could be free. Free. Oh, the idea is tempting. My gosh, I can't believe I just had that thought. How could I even think of doing such a thing? I couldn't tell him Mr. Harms. I know there are people here at Belmont who would turn in their dear mamas for a piece of meat, let alone freedom. Lord, put that ugly idea out of my mind forever and ever. Amen. Page 112. Tuesday, November 22nd. 1859. Mass Henley and a group of men went out looking for Rufus and his family. Rufus was the only person who has ever dared to run away from Belmont, and we wanted him to make it, even though we couldn't say it, not even to each other. There was lots of singing about heaven, but we all know heaven is freedom. Our hopes were crushed like fall leaves neath our feet when Mass Henley got back this evening. Mass Henley called all of us to him. He threw bloody pants and a shirt on the ground before us. They're dead. He spat out the words like bad fruit. All of them. We had to shoot Rufus. The others drowned in the river when the boat they was in turned over. Current took them under. Rufus, Aggie, Wook, baby Noah, all dead. What happened to the railroad that takes slaves to freedom? Didn't the one-eyed man help Rufus and his family? From this day forward, Mass Henley say, we ain't allowing no more Sunday meetings, and we can't speak of Rufus or any members of his family. Mass might be able to tell us what we can do with our bodies, but he can't tell me what to feel, what to think. I will remember Rufus and his family as long as I live, and he can't stop me. Later that same night, even though Mass Henley has forbidden us to gather, we mourn the loss of our friends in our own way. We raised our voices in song from our cabins and the quarters, from the orchards and kitchen, wherever we were. We didn't need to be together to share our grief. We sang our hurt. We clapped our sorrow. We never spoke their names, but we all knew we were mourning our own, Rufus and Aggie, Wook and little Noah. They were free at last. I got a robe, you got a robe. All God's children got a robe. When I get to heaven, gonna put on my robe and shout all over God's heaven. 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 Everybody's talking about heaven. Ain't going there. Heaven. I'm gonna shout all over God's heaven. Wednesday, November 23rd, 1859. We woke this morning and the world looked like it's done been covered in a thin white veil. The first hard frost. Slaughtering time. Saturday, November 26, 1859. The men slaughtered hogs for days. The smell of fresh animal blood turns my stomach, so I stay clear of the slaughtering yard and stay close to the kitchen where pots and pans clanked and banged. The noise helped drown out the sound of dying. As I write, the smokehouse is filled to overflowing with hams and sausage, bacon and ribs, all slow curing in smoke from smoldering wood chips. Later, Aunt T say, just when you think you know the devil, he changes his face. Now I know what she means. I've always thought Miss Henley was the worst man in the world, but then come Briley Waite. Rufus was always in charge of slaughtering, but Mass Henley hired Briley Waite to take charge this year. He is common as dirt, tall and lean with sun-red skin, keeps a tangle of white hair hid up under his beat-up hat. The cat o' nine that hangs close to Mr. Waite's side tells me he's a man who keeps it close because he plans to use it. Watching Waite makes me feel sick in my heart. There is something about him that frightens me way down deep inside. We made soap today under his watchful eyes. He sees everything. To me, he's a dangerment, like a snake, sly. Sunday, November 27th, 1859. Thank goodness for good days. They take the sting out of the bad ones. Auntie sent me down to the stables to get hints. When we walked into the cabin, it was filled with the smell of cinnamon and apples. For days I've been slipping sugar, butter, flour, lard, careful not to get caught. Today I got a cinnamon stick, enough to make a small apple pie. It's first frost, hence his birth time. Just for you, I say, giving him a shiny black button I had found and polished. He promised to keep it always, and I knew he would. I don't have nothing to give, say Spicy. She stood toe to toe, eye to eye with him. Then she gave him a kiss right on the mouth. I'm glad you was born. He let out a whoop that could be heard clear down to the river. We all had to laugh. At times like these, we missed Uncle Heb. But while Spicy and I worked on the quilt, we told stories about him and about Rufus and Aggie and Wook. That made us more thankful that we were together. Apple pie has never tasted so good. Monday, November 28th, 1859. Just as we feared, Mass Henley liked Waite enough to keep him on. Pulled several men away from the tobacco drying sheds and put them on the job of building Mr. Waite's overseer's cabin. Mass Henley chose a spot that gave him a clear view of the whole plantation. He can see the quarters out his back door and the back of the big house from his front door. From the left side window, Waite can see the kitchen and the fields behind, and from his right side window, Waite can see the orchards and woods. Clear to me, Mass Henley has brought Waite here to be his eyes. Tuesday, November 29th, 1859. Ms. Lily sent for me today. She was lying in bed, say she had a fever. So, you like your shoes, she said, groaning softly. I offered to get her some water. She called to me to stand closer, and she grabbed my hand. You like nice things, don't you? I say yes. Then she come back with, you can have lots of things, but you've got to tell me what I want. She asked me question after question about Mr. Harms. So many my head went to swimming, but I was real careful not to let on to nothing. Wonder what's got her sniffing around Mr. Harms like an old hound dog. Missy must have brought her a bone. Now she wants me to bring her another one. I say, if I hear or see something, Miss Lily, I'll come to you right now. All the time I'm thinking, I'd never tell you a thing, especially not on an abolitionist. Wednesday, November 30th, 1859. All this time has passed and Mr. Harms still ain't talked to me. But things have changed so much, I need to tell him Ms. Lily is trying to find something on him. But it's like I ain't even in the room. During lesson time, I rub William's legs after they've been soaked in hot water. I'm still listening and learning all I can, but I wish Mr. Harms would talk to me. Thursday, December 1st, 1859. While serving the noon meal, I heard Miss Lily tell Miss Henley that she had written to a friend of hers in Washington. The friend had wrote back saying, Mr. Harms' father and mother are well-bred Southerners, but his uncles Josiah and Joshua Harms are hell-bent abolitionists. She sucked in as though she had spoken a word purely evil. Who is this Mr. Harms, she say. This I know, Mass and Miss Henley fights on just about everything in the world except in slavery. On that notion, they are together. They plenty mad about losing Rufus and his family. Mass Henley say he would speak to Mr. Harms about his family. I know Mr. Harms said he would speak to me, but that was weeks ago. He never has. I got to warn him. I'm just going to have to speak to him first. Friday, December 2nd, 1859. I took a big chance today. I waited outside William's room before class. When Mr. Harms came down the hall, I whispered, be careful. They know about your uncles being abolitionists. They think you might be one too. Mr. Harms never said a word to me, never even looked my way. I wonder, did he hear me? Later. Mr. Harms heard me all right. After supper, he told Miss Henley about his uncles being abolitionists. It was smart for him to bring it up before he got asked about it. I was serving them coffee in the large parlor when I heard Mr. Harms say he was sick shamed of his relations and wanted to forget they was ever kin. That seemed to set well with Miss Henley. I found every reason to stay in that parlor listening. I poked up the fire as Miss Henley was saying, I'm trusting you to be an honorable man while you're an employee in my home. Coming from Miss Henley, it sounded like a warning. I never took my eyes off Miss Lily. She didn't say much, but the compression on her face told the whole story. She did not trust Mr. Harms, not a stitch. He's got an enemy in Miss Lily, and I think he knows it. All right, we're going to stop there for today. On a separate sheet of paper, using complete sentences, as always, because you are so smart, answer those following 10 questions. Please make sure that you answer every question listed. 3 and 4 are combined questions, as are 6, 7, and 8. Please, you've got plenty of time. Do your best work. Show the world how smart you are. I love you all, and I will read some more for you later. All right? Bye-bye.